South Sudan, a landlocked country in East Central Africa, is a land of vast plains, swamps, and rolling hills. The White Nile, a lifeline for the region, flows through its heart. This is a land rich in biodiversity, home to diverse ethnic groups with unique traditions and languages. These groups share a history marked by both cooperation and conflict, resilience and adaptation. This is the story of South Sudan, a journey through its turbulent past and into a future filled with both challenges and promise. South Sudan's story is inseparable from its geography. The White Nile, originating in the Great Lakes region, has shaped its landscape and history. The Sud, a vast swamp in the Nile basin, has provided both a barrier and a refuge. It has influenced migration patterns, trade routes, and cultural interactions. Understanding South Sudan requires understanding its relationship with the Nile, a source of life and a witness to history. Culturally, South Sudan is a mosaic of over 60 ethnic groups. Each group has its own language, traditions, and social structures. The Dinka, the largest group, are known for their cattle herding traditions. The Nuer, the second largest, are also pastoralists, known for their intricate kinship systems and oral traditions. The Zanda, concentrated in the southwest, have a rich artistic heritage, known for their craftsmanship in metalwork and pottery. These groups, despite their differences, have interacted for centuries. Trade, intermarriage, and shared resources have fostered connections. This complex tapestry of cultures gives South Sudan its unique identity. Understanding this diversity is crucial to understanding the complexities of its past and the challenges of nation building in the present.
Long before the arrival of Europeans, South Sudan was home to complex societies. Archaeological evidence points to ancient kingdoms and chiefdoms that thrived along the Nile and its tributaries. These societies engaged in trade, agriculture, and pastoralism, leaving behind traces of their existence in pottery shards, iron tools, and burial mounds. One such kingdom was Alodia, a Christian kingdom that flourished from the 6th to the 16th century. Located in present-day central and southern Sudan, Alodia controlled trade routes along the Blue Nile. It interacted with neighboring kingdoms like Nubia and Makuria, leaving behind impressive ruins of churches and palaces. To the south, in the region of Bahr el Ghazal, archaeological evidence suggests the presence of iron-working communities dating back to the 5th century. These communities likely engaged in trade with neighboring regions, evidenced by the discovery of beads and other artifacts from distant lands. The arrival of Arab traders and migrants from the north in the 14th and 15th centuries brought new cultural and religious influences. Islam gradually spread southward, coexisting with traditional beliefs. This period also saw the rise of powerful sultanates like the Shilluk kingdom along the White Nile. The Shilluk, known for their elaborate kingship rituals, controlled trade and exerted influence over neighboring groups. These pre-colonial societies were not static entities. They were dynamic and interconnected, engaging in trade, diplomacy, and occasionally conflict. Understanding this complex past is crucial to appreciating the historical depth of South Sudan and its people.
The 19th century marked a turning point in South Sudan's history with the arrival of European colonial powers. Driven by a thirst for resources and strategic advantage, Egypt, under Ottoman and later British influence, sought to expand its control southward. This period witnessed the brutal ivory trade, fueled by European demand, which devastated elephant populations and destabilized local communities. In 1899, an Anglo-Egyptian condominium was established, formalizing joint British and Egyptian rule over Sudan. However, this joint rule was largely a facade, with the British holding the true reins of power. This colonial administration brought about significant changes, imposing new administrative structures, redrawing boundaries, and exploiting resources. The imposition of colonial rule was met with resistance. The most significant uprising was the Mahdist Revolt, a religious and political movement led by Muhammad Ahmad al-Mahdi. The Mahdists successfully challenged Anglo-Egyptian forces, establishing an independent Islamic state in Sudan in 1885. While the Mahdist state ultimately fell to British forces in 1898, the revolt left a lasting impact, highlighting the fragility of colonial control and the power of resistance. The colonial period had a profound impact on South Sudan. It exacerbated ethnic divisions, as the British often favoured certain groups over others in their administrative policies. This divide and rule strategy sowed seeds of future conflict. The introduction of new crops and farming methods, while intended to increase productivity, often disrupted traditional practices and land tenure systems.
Section 4. The Struggle for Self-Determination, the First Sudanese Civil War. As the grip of colonialism loosened in the mid-20th century, nationalist movements across Africa gained momentum. In Sudan, the question of independence was intertwined with the question of unity. Southern Sudanese, marginalized and exploited under colonial rule, harbored deep-seated grievances towards the north. These grievances centered around political, economic, and religious disparities. In 1955, on the eve of Sudan's independence, a mutiny by Southern soldiers in the town of Torit ignited the First Sudanese Civil War. The mutiny, fueled by years of resentment and discrimination, quickly spread throughout the south. The Anya Anya, a Southern Sudanese rebel group, emerged to fight for self-determination. The First Sudanese Civil War was a protracted and brutal conflict, lasting for 17 years. It claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, displaced countless others, and left deep scars on the social fabric of the South. Joseph Lagu emerged as a prominent leader of the Anya Anya, uniting various southern Sudanese factions under a single banner. After years of fighting and international pressure, the Addis Ababa Agreement was signed in 1972, bringing an end to the First Sudanese Civil War. The agreement granted a degree of autonomy to southern Sudan, establishing a regional government with limited powers. Section 5. Shattered Peace. The Second Sudanese Civil War. The Addis Ababa Agreement, while a significant achievement, proved to be a fragile peace. The underlying issues of inequality, underdevelopment, and political marginalization persisted. The discovery of oil in southern Sudan in the late 1970s further complicated matters, as control over this valuable resource became a major point of contention between North and South. In 1983, President Gaafar Nimeri's decision to abrogate the Addis Ababa Agreement and impose Sharia law nationwide reignited the conflict. The Second Sudanese Civil War had begun. The Sudan People's Liberation Army, or SPLA, led by John Garang, emerged as the main rebel group fighting for southern Sudanese self-determination. The Second Sudanese Civil War was even more devastating than the first. It was marked by extreme brutality, including widespread human rights abuses, forced displacement, and the deliberate targeting of civilians. The conflict had a devastating impact on southern Sudan, decimating its infrastructure, disrupting its economy, and creating a generation scarred by war. The conflict drew international attention, with various actors attempting to mediate a peace settlement. However, deep-seated mistrust and competing interests made a lasting solution elusive. The war dragged on for over 2 decades, claiming the lives of an estimated 2 million people.
Section 6. A Promise of Peace. The Comprehensive Peace Agreement. By the early 2000s, international pressure to end the conflict in Sudan had intensified. The United States, under the George W. Bush administration, made Sudan a foreign policy priority, imposing sanctions and pushing for a negotiated settlement. Regional actors, including Kenya and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, or IGAD, also played a key role in facilitating talks between the Sudanese government and the SPLA. In 2005, after years of negotiations, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, or CPA, was signed in Nairobi, Kenya. The CPA was a landmark agreement, addressing key issues that had fueled the conflict. It granted Southern Sudan autonomy for a 6-year interim period, after which it would hold a referendum on independence. The CPA established a power-sharing government in Khartoum, with the SPLA becoming a partner in government. It also created a wealth-sharing mechanism, ensuring that oil revenues would be divided equally between North and South. The agreement included provisions for security arrangements, with the SPLA becoming part of a joint integrated army with the Sudanese armed forces. The signing of the CPA was met with cautious optimism, both within Sudan and internationally. It was seen as a significant step towards ending decades of conflict and paving the way for a peaceful and prosperous future for both Sudan and South Sudan.